January 1942. Dawn creeps through the dense jungles of the Philippines. Mist clings to the undergrowth, dampening sound but amplifying tension. Somewhere ahead, a Japanese patrol moves cautiously, rifles slung, eyes sharp for any sign of American resistance. In the shadows, a lone Marine grips his 1911A1 B45 pistol. The leather of his holster creaks as he shifts weight from foot to foot. The morning is eerily still, broken only by the distant call of a jungle bird and the soft rustle of leaves underfoot. Then, a sudden crack, a Type 14 Nambu fires. The shot echoes, ricochets off a tree. The Marine's 1911A1 responds with a short, precise recoil, its .45 caliber round cutting through the air with authority. Something in the Japanese soldier's eyes changes, a hesitation, a pause that wasn't there a moment before. They've encountered this American sidearm before, in training perhaps, but never in the chaos of real combat. One weapon feels light, ineffectual. The other is undeniable, commanding, deadly. In this quiet clash of steel and courage, the story of a sidearm that would stun the Imperial Japanese Army begins. By the late 1930s, the world was already bracing for a new mechanized war. In the Pacific, tensions simmered between an expanding Imperial Japan and the United States, increasingly wary of Japanese ambitions in East Asia. The US Army and Marine Corps were steadily modernizing, with lessons drawn from World War I and domestic law enforcement experiences, emphasizing firepower, reliability, and standardized equipment. At the heart of this preparation was the 1911A1 pistol, a semi-automatic sidearm chambered in the formidable 45 ACP cartridge. Adopted in 1911 and improved over the decades, the M1911A1 combined stopping power, accuracy, and mechanical reliability, qualities American military planners believed were essential in jungle skirmishes, urban engagements, and close-quarters combat. Across the Pacific, the Imperial Japanese Army relied on a very different doctrine. Its standard sidearm, the Type 14 Nambu pistol, had been officially adopted in 1925. It was smaller, light. Japanese military thinking emphasized the sword and bayonet, reflecting a blend of traditional martial culture and the tactical lessons of earlier conflicts, such as the Russo-Japanese War. Pistols were often considered secondary weapons, intended as a backup for officers or for self-defense in situations where rifles or bayonets were impractical. The Type 14's design reflected this philosophy. Compact and relatively delicate, it was easy to carry but prone to jamming if not meticulously maintained. Its 8-round magazine was a fraction of the firepower the American soldier could summon from a single Min-1911A1 magazine. In controlled environments, it functioned well. In the jungles and swamps of the Pacific, however, the Nambu's limitations were laid bare. Mud, rain, and the constant grind of patrols could render the pistol unreliable at the very moment it was needed most. In contrast, the Min-1911A1 had been tested in harsher conditions for decades. The 45 ACP round delivered a stopping power that few weapons of comparable size could match. Soldiers reported that even a glancing shot could incapacitate an opponent, critical in close-quarter encounters where hesitation could mean death. The pistol's weight and balance allowed for rapid, accurate fire, while its robust construction meant it could endure the rigors of jungle warfare, sand, and tropical humidity. In essence, the M1911A1 was not just a weapon, it was an extension of the soldier's hand, a psychological anchor in the chaos of combat. Production and logistics further amplified these differences. By 1941, the United States had mass-produced hundreds of thousands of M1911A1s, with standardized parts and established training programs. The stage was set for a weapon that would leave a lasting impression on the Imperial Japanese enemy, forcing them to adapt or suffer. In the humid, stifling jungles of the Philippines and Guam, soldiers' lives often depended on the smallest of decisions. A single step, a snap of movement, a shot fired at the perfect moment. For the American Marine clutching his 1911A1, confidence came not just from training, but from the weight and balance of the pistol in his hand. Unlike the lighter, more fragile Type 14 Nambu, the 45's recoil was firm, controlled, and predictable. Each shot carried a cycle of impact. A Japanese soldier struck by one round could no longer advance, halting a rush that might have overwhelmed an isolated squad. Japanese troops quickly realized the human toll of this disparity. Diaries and reports describe the initial confusion when Marines returned fire with authority. The Nambu, in contrast, often failed to stop an opponent immediately. Soldiers trained to rely on their pistols found themselves hesitating, caught in the realization that their weapon could not match the American sidearm. The fire was subtle but potent, a pause long enough to change the outcome of a firefight. It was not just a question of firepower. It was a confrontation of trust and confidence in one's tools. In these intimate, chaotic moments, the human element of warfare was starkly exposed. A pistol was not merely metal and wood. It was a lifeline, an extension of will and courage. And in this lifeline, the M1911A1 consistently outperformed the Type 14, shaping the soldier's instincts and decisions long before the larger battles unfolded. Close-quarter engagements in the Pacific were unforgiving. Dense foliage ruined buildings, and narrow trench networks transformed every encounter into a high-stakes test of reflexes and decision-making. In these conditions, the M1911A1 proved decisive. Its stopping power allowed Marines to control hallways, clear bunkers, and repel sudden ambushes with fewer rounds than the Nambu required. A single well-placed .45 caliber round could neutralize an opponent, buying crucial seconds for squad coordination or retreat. Japanese officers quickly noticed the tactical implications. Patrols that relied on surprise or aggressive charges were vulnerable to the immediate lethality of the M1911A1. While rifles remained the primary weapon in open combat, sidearms became unexpectedly influential in close quarters, redefining small unit tactics. American training emphasized these scenarios, ensuring that soldiers could draw, aim, and fire instinctively under stress, skills that the Japanese Type 14 could rarely match in intensity. By the time of the early 1942 skirmishes, it was evident that sidearms were not merely backup tools, they were force multipliers. Marines and soldiers could exploit the jungle's chaos, turning moments of uncertainty into controlled advantage. For the Japanese, this required rapid adaptation, often learned too late in the heat of combat. The difference between the M1911A1 and the Type 14 Nambu was not merely psychological, it was measurable. The American, 45 ACP cartridge delivered roughly 230–250 foot-pounds of energy per shot, enough to incapacitate targets with fewer rounds. The Type 14's ATEM Nambu cartridge, by contrast, produced roughly half that energy. Its lighter round often failed to stop a determined opponent, particularly in close combat. Design and ergonomics compounded this effect. The M1911A1's single-action trigger, solid steel frame, and balanced weight made rapid, accurate fire possible under stress. Its magazine capacity, 7 to 8 rounds, was modest but sufficient when combined with reliability and stopping power. The Type 14, while innovative for Japan in the 1920s, suffered from weaker springs, inconsistent extraction, and a grip that many soldiers found awkward in combat. Small unit leaders were advised to anticipate hesitation under fire and to avoid over-reliance on Type 14 pistols in close combat. Yet adaptation was slow. The M1911A1's reputation had grown, and Japanese forces were forced into reactive strategies, often attempting to engage at greater distances where the Type 14 could still function without immediate consequence. In the Solomons and later at Peleliu, the consequences were unmistakable. Marines holding choke points in bunkers and caves relied heavily on the M1911A1 to suppress enemy assaults. Japanese soldiers, advancing through narrow tunnels or jungle trails, confronted a weapon that combined stopping power, accuracy, and reliability in a way their own pistols could not match. The results were swift and stark. Engagements that might have been protracted became brief and decisive, with the sidearm tipping the balance. The cumulative effect on morale was profound. American soldiers drew confidence from a weapon they trusted implicitly. Each encounter reinforced their training, conditioning, and trust in their equipment. Japanese troops, meanwhile, faced a growing psychological disadvantage. Encounters that previously might have been manageable now carried heightened risk. Hesitation, once brief, extended into deadly indecision. In letters and diaries, some Japanese soldiers admitted that the M1911A1 was not merely a weapon, but a tactical equalizer capable of turning a modest firefight into a decisive American advantage. By the end of 1943, the impact of these close-quarter skirmishes and small unit engagements had ripple effects across the Pacific theatre. Strategic planning, officer training, and tactical doctrines had to consider not just the rifle and the artillery, but the subtle, deadly advantage of the American sidearm. Guadalcanal, the Philippines, Peleliu, each battlefield reinforced the lesson. A reliable, powerful, well-trained weapon in the hands of disciplined troops could decisively shape engagements that might otherwise have been uncertain. The M1911A1 did not win wars alone. It did not replace strategy, numbers, or logistics. But in the intimate chaos of jungle combat, in the confined spaces of ruined buildings, and in the split-second decisions of life-or-death encounters, it made an undeniable difference. It turned hesitation into decisive action, fear into confidence, and a simple weapon into a psychological and tactical force multiplier. As the smoke cleared from these battles, one truth became undeniable. The Type 14 Nambu, elegant and functional in theory, was no match for the M1911A1 in the brutal reality of Pacific combat. And the American sidearm, quiet but lethal, had permanently altered the calculus of close-quarters warfare. By early 1943, the evidence was clear. The M1911A1 .45 pistol had reshaped small unit combat in the Pacific. American after-action reports from Guadalcanal, Peleliu, and the early Philippine campaigns repeatedly highlighted the sidearm's effectiveness in close-quarters engagements. Marines described encounters where the M1911A1 allowed them to neutralize Japanese soldiers before they could exploit terrain or surprise attacks. One official report noted that in engagements under 25 meters, the M1911A1 was often decisive where rifles were impractical or unavailable. Japanese reports, in stark contrast, acknowledged a troubling pattern. Diaries and officer logs frequently cited the Type 14 Nambu as underpowered in critical moments. A Japanese officer stationed on Guadalcanal wrote, "Our pistols are inadequate against the American .45. Men fall when we strike lightly, yet our rounds often fail to stop them." These admissions, though understated, revealed a hard truth. In the intimate chaos of jungle combat, technology could outweigh traditional doctrine and courage. Casualty reports further illustrated the disparity. While overall numbers of killed and wounded were shaped by artillery, rifles, and larger-scale assaults, the sidearm often influenced the outcome of skirmishes, ambushes, and trench raids. Marines armed with the M1911A1 reported fewer close-quarters casualties compared to Japanese counterparts armed with Type 14s in similar engagements. In jungle patrols and urban clearing operations, this difference allowed small American units to hold territory, cover retreats, and press attacks that might have been untenable with rifles alone. The ripple effect extended to training and logistics. American commanders emphasized marksmanship, rapid drawing drills, and maintenance routines for the M1911A1, ensuring that soldiers could exploit its capabilities fully. Japanese officers, meanwhile, had to reconsider their reliance on the Type 14 in close combat. Some experimented with carrying rifles in hand, reserving pistols as true last resort weapons, while others supplemented sidearms with grenades or bayonets in confined engagements. Yet these adaptations could not fully compensate for the stopping power deficit that became increasingly apparent with every encounter. The psychological consequences were equally important. American troops developed a confidence and aggressiveness that was often decisive in combat. Knowing that a single, well-placed .45 round could halt an enemy charge allowed Marines to act decisively, even when outnumbered or outflanked. Japanese soldiers, conversely, experienced micro-moments of hesitation, doubt, and fear, effects that compounded over repeated engagements. These human factors, influenced directly by the reliability and lethality of the M1911A1, shaped not just individual skirmishes, but unit cohesion and morale. By the time the Solomon Islands campaign ended, both sides had learned critical lessons. The M1911A1 was confirmed as a superior sidearm for close-quarters combat, particularly in the dense, unforgiving environments of the Pacific theatre. The Type 14 Nambu, while mechanically sound under ideal conditions, proved ill-suited for the realities of jungle and urban warfare. This understanding influenced strategic planning, patrol tactics, and small unit training, cementing the M1911A1's role not just as a weapon, but as a force multiplier in the hands of disciplined, well-trained soldiers. The cumulative impact of the M1911A1's superiority extended far beyond individual skirmishes. By mid-1943, American commanders recognized that reliable sidearms could shape engagements at multiple levels, from small patrols to coordinated assaults on fortified positions. Marines and soldiers increasingly relied on the .45 pistol to secure choke points, cover retreats, and exploit moments of enemy hesitation. In reports from the Solomon Islands and New Guinea campaigns, officers emphasized that M1911A1 equipped squads demonstrated higher efficiency in close-quarters combat, often achieving objectives with fewer casualties. Japanese forces, meanwhile, were forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. After-action analyses from Guadalcanal and Peleliu revealed that the Type 14 Nambu, while sufficient for ceremonial use or secondary purposes, consistently underperformed against American sidearms in combat. Officers acknowledged that the pistol's stopping power was inadequate to halt determined Marines, and even experienced troops reported repeated failures to neutralize a threat with a single shot. These shortcomings influenced Japanese tactics. Officers increasingly relied on masked rifle fire, grenades, or bayonet charges to compensate, shifting emphasis away from individual sidearm engagements. The psychological and tactical consequences were intertwined. American soldiers, confident in the stopping power and reliability of their 1911A1s, acted decisively. Their aggressiveness, reinforced by the knowledge that each round could be lethal, amplified unit cohesion and morale.